at the currencies, at the indexes, so that we can begin to see what's going on into the market. Thank you very much, Sakib. Thank you. Same to you. Okay, so let's. Okay, guys, we're going to look. So the first thing we start with is looking at the dollar index, because this is now the dollar is the largest currency in the world, and this is what we have to look at. And if you look at the weekly chart for the dollar index, which is the basket for the whole dollar as a whole, you see that we have really a very, very, very nice chart. And we have closed the week on the weekly chart. You can see that last week has been a very strong week for the dollar, and we closed the week at 80.44, which is way above the 80.38, and we broke above the structure point of 78.77. So we had about 200 pip move or 200 basis point move in the dollar index, which is again fantastic. And we are now closed above the 80.38, which is again another structure point. And on the weekly chart, this is a very positive close for the dollar, and should indicate a great deal of should indicate a continuation, and it gives us a high probability trade at a low risk. So right now we can take a long in the dollar, and my stop in the dollar index would be like 6 pips away, which is again is brilliant. If you look at the daily chart again for the dollar, you can see that how we closed above this structure point, closing over here at 80.43. This is an excellent close, and as you can see, this is the 78.77. Breaking above it, we had a 5 consecutive days to the upside. The only slow day was on Thursday, which was basically understood, which is the Thanksgiving holiday. And it seemed that most of our American guests are still on Thanksgiving, so the majority of them are kind of on vacation. So anyway, this would indicate we probably have we do have a trend change in the dollar, and we should be looking for a continuation, and the dollar index should be moving. I mean, what we do have right now is a trend change in the dollar, depending how far the magnitude would be, but we do have a trend change, and we should be looking for a continuation. So the very strong currency as of today is the dollar. So the strongest currency we have right now is, as far as this moment, the dollar is very strong. The second currency we're going to look at, of course, which is the euro, based on the events that's going on. And the euro, on the weekly chart, we do have a trend reversal to the downside, and we should be bearish to the euro. We should stay short the euro below 132.41, and our stop should be above the 133.28. So the euro is extremely weak, but again, since we had the events come out, or the agreement or the settlement that took place over the weekend, so we will define a reversal point, for which we will see where the traders are going to reverse and start going long the euro. But as of now, we have the euro is extremely weak. We are in a downward trend for the euro. The second pair we're going to look at is the Aussie, and we have a very interesting setup in the Aussie. We do have a major sell signal in the Aussie, and we should be looking again for a continuation to the downside. The Aussie is quite weak, and you will see it much more clearer when we go and do the Aussie dollar, the cross. But this, we should be looking for the Aussie to continue its decline, and it is also considered one of the weak. So the euro is weak, the Aussie is weak, and then we have two other currencies that we're going to look at, which are extremely interesting. One is the British pound, and this on the weekly looks ugly. The pound on the weekly chart does look ugly. It looks very weak. It is actually weaker than the euro, and it is weaker than the Aussie. As of now, looking at the British pound, it looks like so far technically that it is the weakest of all currencies so far. And you can see it broke below the 156.85, and we closed at 156.06. So we actually broke the structure, and we broke it with momentum, and we are closed, and we have closed the day near the low of the day and near the low of the week. And the close is a good close. Technically, that would indicate continuation. The other currency that we're going to look at is the Japanese yen. And this too is in what we call, it's still in a bull market. It is not a trend change. We don't have a trend change. The trend change will be below 118.06, but as of now we are in a long liquidation, or in a, yeah, let's call it a long liquidation. The only thing that I would share with you is this. I mean, if you want to be nitpicky, or very precise, we do have a minor trend change over here. This is a minor structure failure. It's not an elegant, it doesn't look elegant, it doesn't look pretty structural failure, but nonetheless it is a structural failure, and we closed below it with 30 pips. So we should be looking for a continuation again to the downside. So the odds are quite high to reach the 118. If you look at the Swiss franc, I'm going to sum them up in a minute, come back and sum them up. The same chart that you see here on the Swiss franc is pretty much the same as you see in the Japanese yen. I'll put the Japanese yen back for you again. The same small structural failure over here in the Japanese yen. It is the same as the Swiss franc. So we can expect a push to the downside in the Swiss franc. We can expect a push to the downside in the Japanese yen. And if you look at the British pound, that is the weakest of them all. So if I'm going now to gauge the choices of currencies that I want to be trading next week, the first one I want to be looking at as a buyer would be the US dollar. The US dollar now looks to be in an upward trend. We should be looking for a continuation to the upside, and we have very low entry risk, or very low risk trades on the dollar. So we want to be long the dollar yen, the dollar Swiss, the dollar, the Aussie dollar, short the Aussie dollar, short the pound dollar, and short the euro dollar. So we want to be long all the dollar and short the crosses. Also, the yen is weak. So we want to be, in this case, we want to be long the dollar yen, and we are going to see now selectively if we want to take the Aussie yen maybe, because the Aussie is still in an uptrend like the yen. So we might be looking at taking the Aussie yen. We might be looking at taking the euro yen if we do have a reversal. The pound is quite suspicious. So the weakest of all currencies is the pound, the British pound, and then the euro as far as the second weakest, and then we have the Swiss and the yen, which are giving us a what we call long liquidation. And what confirms that also is if you look at the currencies, the metals. If you see gold is now in a congestion. It is beginning to sell off. It is now in a price acceptance zone. It is not breaking to the upside, so it's rather in a sideways, which again would be a response to the strength of the dollar, and there is no pressure in going after gold. The same thing you would see in silver. See the capitulation last Friday in silver. You had 27. You had $1.50 per ounce move. That is quite a big move in silver in one day. $1.50 per ounce. Also in copper, again you're looking at a sideways, or in a, it is not in a downtrend. Copper by any means is still in an uptrend, but it is sitting, your structure point is the $3.70 a pound, and now we're sitting, we tried to break it several times, and now we're bouncing. So still positively and technically we're looking for the Aussie to go up, for the copper to go up. But we're having liquidation, which also will be a response to the weakness in the Aussie. So putting all this together, we're having weakness in the metals. If you look at the grains, all of the grains have turned negative. And so the grains, most of the commodities, when I say negative, I'm not saying it's a bear market or it's turning bearish, but we're getting into long liquidation. And all of that indicates that the dollar is strengthening. So if the dollar is strengthening, then people will tend to take profits in gold, will tend to take profits in silver, will tend to take their profits in all the commodities that has been in a bull market. And this profit taking is what confirms to us that we are having an undertone strength in the US dollar. So having said that, let's sum it up. We're going to be buyers of the dollar. We're going to be sellers of the primarily the British pound, then the Japanese yen, and then the euro. And we're going to look at the technical and structural points in the Australian dollar. These will be our candidates to for our sales. So long dollar, short yen, short British pound first, short euro, then short Aussie, and then we're going to keep an eye on the yen and the Swiss franc. Okay, that is the Canadian. You don't want to bother with it right now. Again, it's dollar strength. The Canadian has been in this sideways pattern. It's too noisy, Bill. But again, all what it is, it's an indication of dollar strength. All right. Okay, guys.